What's up? All right, so props are a little bit easier to figure out than hooks. I mean, not hooks. Than state is. State has a little bit more, I guess, a little bit different ways of being used than what we're used to. But props are really easy, so we're going to work around with that. Here's how we're actually going to add our props here. We're going to say to-dos equals to-dos. Now, what's happening here, again, I can change this one to something else if I want to, but this is going to be our props. We have just completely written a new attribute for our to-do list, okay? And now we're using our to-dos. We have not set our to-dos to anything yet, so they're not going to have any values yet, but we will get there. But we've taken this, and it ends up getting passed in right there. So you can see when you hover over it, const to-dos, it can be anything, and there's going to be a list. Any kind of data getting passed into a list. And then here, and you can see again that that's there, but this is not set as a const, right? And so that's how you know that this is the actual attribute name of our element, right? In the same way that you could add a class name or something else, this is the props name, and this is what's actually getting passed there. Now, in order to utilize this, we have to actually go and handle it in our to-do list app, right? So if I were to try to run this now, it would actually be pretty grouchy probably, because it would say, hey, you passed these to-dos and you never received them. So that's never used. All right, I guess it's not too bad. But here's what we'll do here. We're going to take in to-dos that way. And yeah, to-dos is declared, but its value is never read, so you're never actually using it here. So what we're going to do is we're going to change this to to-dos, and this should eventually take our to-dos from here, which we still haven't set, but we'll get there soon. We'll take those to-dos, whatever those are, and it will end up spitting them out and printing them out right there. So now if I run this, we shouldn't see anything because to-dos is void or null or a none type. So here's my to-do, should be gone. Yep. So now it's still telling us, hey, you said set to-dos is going to do something, but we never get utilized, which is why it's not displaying here. But all we've done here is, again, for our props, we've set the name of our props, whatever that might be, right? And then we've taken our stuff from our state. We've taken our state and actually passed that in through our props, okay? In Python, there would have been other ways of doing this, but with JavaScript and with React, this is how we're actually passing our data back and forth. So again, this is going to be really important. This is going to be really key for stuff later on, because obviously applications, like one of the main things that we do is we move data around. And so this is going to be how we end up doing that. We won't get the full picture until we get to our set to-dos part of this, but that's not going to be for a little while yet. And we are going to head on over here. And that is a little bit about props. And then in the next video, we are going to, we'll do it in this video too. What the heck? So we're actually going to, rather than spit all of our to-dos out like this, we're going to want to actually kind of write a loop that's going to go over each to-do and not style it exactly, but we're going to give it a checkbox to go with it, and then display the to-dos so that then we can delete the to-dos or change them or that kind of thing. So that'll be really nifty. And we're going to set that with a data loop. So we're going to do a new component in here called, data loop. We're going to spell that right, .js, delightful, and we're going to do React functional component. Woo! Right. I'm going to change this to my const data loop, and I'm going to set this to the ES6 version, and we should be groovy. Cool beans. All right. So right now we can, I believe we end up actually, let me go back and look at this too. Yes, we're going to go back to our to-do list, and we're actually going to pass our to-dos in. So let's write, actually instead of that, I'm just going to send back the data loop, which at this point doesn't make any sense to do things this way. data loop is not defined. We're going to have to import it. Import data loop from /data loop. Did I capitalize it here? No, I didn't. So let's, actually, I'm going to rename this. Sorry. I like that better. Yes. I'll be that. I'll head back over here, and now I should all be happy. Cool beans. Why are you still trying to compile? Yeah, we already updated this. Stop. Anyways, so we got data loop. It's inside of the same folder. It's right there, dataloop.js. That should all work out once the compiler gets its coffee for the morning. And we're going to pass in here. We're going to pass in to-dos again as to-dos. Okay. And then we're going to head back to our data loop, right? So again, we just passed it from app. From here, from to-dos, we've passed it into our to-do list as props. We've gone to our to-do list and taken that in, and then we passed it again to data loop. We'll do some other things with it in the future, but for right now, that's what we're working with. And now we're going to head to our actual data loop, and we're going to write some code. So we've imported the component, and we are going to actually map over our we need to take this into to-dos. There we go. That's legible. What we're going to do is, rather than just printing out our to-dos, what we'll do, actually, I want to be consistent. We need to do that way, I think. Yeah, we'll do that. I'll come here. We'll call this to-do. So rather than just doing that, like what we were doing earlier, we're going to end up mapping over it. So no div here. But what we'll do is we're going to have to-dos.map. To-do gets translated, we gets changed into, again, this is just a kind of like an anonymous function here, right? When we take in a to-do and we do something to it real quick, we don't need to name it. Anonymous functions are another really great kind of part of functional programming. And so part of why we didn't use it a lot with our Python and Flask, but we're going to use them a lot here with React. So we're going to return. Oh no, this is what we wanted to do. My bad. We're not mapping over this yet. All good here. Yeah. My naming of things is a little bit funky. So instead of this, we will end up mapping over these. There we go. That makes more sense to me. All right. So here we'll return to-dos.map. To-do. Looks like this doesn't seem to be the best way of going about this problem, Brandon. It's because it's not. It's because you wrote this code several weeks ago and have done a lot since then. All right. So there we go. So now what happened here is we went to the data loop. We passed into to-do as that. Again, each to-do is the thing that we're mapping over, right? So we're looking in the to-dos. We got an array, probably. Okay, just a suspicion. Either an array or an object or something like that. And we're going to iterate over each one. We're going to take that value and we're going to go to data loop, utilize it. And again, data loop is just going to create a div with that to do in it. Okay, so we're just going to have a whole bunch of divs over and over again. We're going to return that data loop component with our to do, and that will be what happens. And so what this means is that however many things are in to dos, each one will end up getting rendered individually, right? So it'll actually be flexible. If we have 5 items in there, it will loop 5 times. If we got 100 items in there, it will loop 100 times. And that's why we're kind of doing it that way. Great. Okay, so now we should be pretty good. Data loop is basically inside of to-do list, and to-do list is basically inside of app.js. And so we got kind of like a too deep thing right there, just in case you're wondering how because there's a difference between like component structure and file structure. Our file structure, obviously, they're all parallel, but we want to actually run the data loop inside of to-do list, and we want to do that inside of the app. And obviously, index.js we're basically leaving alone because we just want to run this app, this app.js. So theoretically, you could do this all on one page. But again, just like Flask, right? Like we want to keep our interests separate. We want to keep things different. We want to keep it specific. And that way, again, especially if you have to debug this stuff, functional programming is fairly easy to figure out what's going on fairly quickly, which is nice. Because it will tell you, hey, there's a problem with this specific thing, right? This function is supposed to do this thing, but it didn't. And you just go find the function and figure out what went wrong. Anyways, all right. So we haven't made our buttons just work yet, but let's test our use state function. So we're going to go to app.js, which is where we are. And we're going to add some empty strings inside the use state, right? So our default right now is empty, but we're going to put in eat breakfast, put on pants, and a good reminder. Remember to drink water daily. Pause the video right now and drink some water. It's good for you. Okay, so if we run our React app now, which it should compile now because it won't be mad about the data loop thing because that was a lie. Oh no, it is still mad. Data loop. Oh, did I not export it? Export const. Export function. Oh, maybe this needs to be a function. Will you be happy now? No. I bet this is what it is. That ought to fix it. No. All right, give me a second. Okay, I went back to the old version of JavaScript here. Export default function, which was the original React functional component, and that ended up fixing it. So we still have a const here, and we're using the ES6 syntax for how we declare this one. But it would seem that the default function there it works better, probably because of how we're actually using it here. Yeah, because here it ends up being a function. So I'm guessing it has to do with the map too, that we can't use that same because we're actually ending up changing the const, the value of that one. But that's okay. All right. So now if we head over to here, you can see we've got eat breakfast, put on pants, remember to drink water daily. It's still mad about our set to dos because we were not actually like using that. You'll also notice that we have this warning about each child in a list should have a unique key prop, right? That's because right now, if we were to inspect each of these, which we can't do, but there's some interesting stuff going on with those. And that's because React likes to, again, keep good track of its data. And so each of these should have a key value kind of going with it. So what we can do is we can go back to our data loop here. And we can say key equals to do. Oh no, wrong one, wrong spot. Just kidding. We can say, oh, well, the key equals to do, right? There's that. And then we have to go and handle that, I believe, in the, no, we don't have to. Should be groovy now. Okay. So now we have keys, but the problem is that our keys are actually going to end up being, if we were to console log the keys here, it would end up being, they'd all end up still being the same as the name. And we want those to be separate. We want to say that the keys should have different numbers with them each time. So we're going to head back to app.js, and we're going to actually make this into an object. Now, you're going to momentarily be like, That cannot be right. That's messed up, man. You said we're not using objects. That's not actually what I said. Okay? We are not rejecting object-oriented, like objects are still a valid thing, right? JSON is JavaScript object notation. We're still passing objects back and forth. We're just not setting up our code in an object-oriented sort of way. We're not writing our code like it's a giant object. We're writing our code like it's a bunch of functions that each do one thing. Each of these components just basically does one thing, right? And some of them, like, obviously they will hold other things, but the idea here is that app.js is where the app logic lives. Index.js is where the configuration kind of lives, right? The to-do list is our component that has a to-do list in it, and the data loop component is a component that actually helps us loop over our data, right? So each thing really basically has one job. Different than one of these handling logic about the nav bar and about the body of our thing and how we pass our data all inside of one package. That can get really sloppy. This is a little bit different. And we are allowed to use objects still here. That's not a problem. That is legal to use objects, again, as data types that we're passing around. Totally fine, right? Kind of like dictionaries in Python. Okay, but we're not setting up our app in an object kind of way. So we're going to have name here. It's going to be eat breakfast. We'll have ID is put on pants, and we'll say, oh wait, we're just going to use just one of these. I don't need to put all three of these. Put on pants would be a ridiculous ID. Hear that. ID will be 0, and then we're going to say is complete is going to be our last attribute. And because we're going to end up setting this equal to the checkbox on our to-dos later. You're not as mad as you think you are. I don't believe you. You might be a little mad. But it's still bleeding. We're still getting errors thrown left and right. Whee! Right, child. Did I do this backwards? Maybe. Oh, right. Yeah. So, I mean, it literally tells us objects are not valid as a React child. I should have just read the error. The code I'm working off of is like all the way done already. So like that's part of why a couple of the like to build I'm trying to show you the logic of how we build this and why we do what we do. That's a really big thing that I've been focusing on throughout this course. And in this case, the why what we are doing here is not super obvious because I already have this whole thing basically set up to automate handling the state. And so instead of what we're going to do here, the problem is that we're calling in just to-dos as a whole. And what we should do is to-do.id. And what we'll fix this is going to be on data loop. We want to-do.name. And that should actually work out better. We'll see if this renders. There we go. Eat breakfast. Now it's a little bit happier there. It's still grumpier. Maybe it's grumpy. Maybe if we, yeah, there we go. So we have to clear the console. Life is groovy, right? So now we got eat breakfast. We got our name displaying. Our key is set for to-do.id because, again, it wanted that key attribute in there somewhere. We just needed to actually handle that correctly. And that should basically take care of it for now. But now we're missing our other objects, right? So we're eating breakfast. But we are still not wearing pants and we're dehydrated, and that's the problem. So we need to populate the rest of this. And theoretically, we could go back to our app here and we could just like write in the rest of these, right? You know, the rest of these objects in here. But it would be a whole lot cooler if our document actually like passed those items back and forth, and we were able to actually write the input here and actually take care of that itself. So we're going to add an input here. Type equals text and close that. That should be pretty straightforward. Head back here. Now we've got this and we can type stuff in it, right? Our buttons still don't do anything, and that is sad. So we're going to kind of wrap it up here. We've added this this input there, and we're going to actually start handling moving the data back and forth. Our data loop is not quite done, but it's close. Our to-do list is not quite done, but it's close. And the rest of this, we're going to be handling JavaScript functions and processes in here to help end up actually operating the app and rendering and handling all that stuff. So, should be pretty sweet. I'll see you in the next video. Onward.